Start.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, class.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Good, thank you.
I'm good. I'm good. But I'm also glad.
The CMS works.
I'm also glad that this is over this week. It's been hectic for me.
Yeah.
All right. It's been nice meeting you guys and interacting with the very many of you that come to class. Very, very many of you, but I do appreciate you coming and the consistency. And I believe that you learned something from being present in class, because you're being present in class every time, despite that you're so many and all of that, means that you're gaining something, I think. That's why you keep coming in. Okay, so thank you. All right, thank you to you and thank you to me. I don't know. I guess it benefits. So today we're going back to that CNS, Central Nervous System chapter of our book. Today I want to have my book with me because I got mine. I took mine as well. Yes, we're going to be studying together this morning. So, I think this is about the only thing we haven't covered in that chapter of CNS, the anti-emetic drugs. But we've alluded to them so many times during the course of our lectures. We've had to mention antiemetics here and there while we were looking at the other topics that we looked at. So I think it's not going to be something too, we're not unfamiliar with it as it is. So we know that emesis is the same thing as vomiting. So another word for vomiting is emesis. All right. Another word for vomiting is emesis. And usually, before, more often than not, before someone vomits, they usually have a precursor to vomiting, which is nausea. So they'll be nauseous because of a noxious stimuli that has been exposed to. So we're going to take nausea and vomiting together because they go hand in hand. All right, so the content of our lecture today, we need to know what emesis is. We'll try and define it. And then we need to understand the pathophysiology of emesis. How does it happen? What triggers it in the body? That's also how the vomiting reflex comes about. The vomiting reflex would also stand for the pathophysiology of emesis. And then we look at the drugs that are used in the treatment of emesis. And emesis can be as a result of, it can come as a result of different factors. Okay, it can be induced by different factors. Can someone name some of the factors that may cause an individual to vomit? Gastric irritation, foul smell, pregnancy, hormones. Pregnancy hormones can cause vomiting as well. What else? Unappetizing food. Sure, that's serious, eh? Just because it's unappetizing.
Yeah, but when you eat it,
Yes, it can build up that. Yes. Anything else? Hello, let's have one class. Anything else? Chemotherapy? Yeah, medication, radiation therapy. All of those things can cause emesis. Alright, so it's good we've already outlined it. So emesis I defined here. So learning outcome, how can we test ourselves after this lecture? We should know the receptors involved in emesis, explain the role of neurotransmitters, and be able to classify the antiemetic drugs. One thing I have to put here is to also understand the mechanism of action of the antiemetic drugs. All right. So, emesis I have defined as, no, not emesis first. So I look at the precursor, which is nausea. Okay? More often the precursor of emesis or vomiting is nausea. And nausea itself is an unpleasant sensation. Okay? And while it's an unpleasant sensation, there may be a precursor to vomiting. So vomiting we can now define as forceful, involuntary expulsion of gastric content. Forceful, involuntary, most times, expulsion of gastric content. Most times it's involuntary. Sometimes you can induce, like people that are anorexic, all right, people that are very conscious of they feel they're too big, they can induce emesis, after eating, or in the case of poisoning, which we'll see later, we might need to induce emesis. So emesis, why is emesis under CNS? Does it make sense? Shouldn't it have been under the gastrointestinal tract?
Was it involved with the medulla oblongata, which is a vomiting center?
Okay, so you said it's because it involves the vomiting center in the medulla oblongata, which is part of the CNS, the brain and the CNS. Very good. So that's the answer. Because you're now taught, when we did GIT conditions, why didn't we just do emesis as vomiting? It comes out through the GIT tract, but we're classifying it under CNS conditions. So do we know the reason why? Because the etiology of emesis, or the pathophysiology of emesis, or the origin of emesis, or the induction or stimulation of emesis takes place in the CNS. All right? It has, the CNS controls vomiting, or a part of the CNS controls vomiting. And that's why I have this picture of the brain here. And we can see there, like she said, the vomiting center is here. Does this show when I do this? I need to get it pointed, it doesn't show. Okay, so the vomiting center is right there, which controls all when it is stimulated, it causes an individual to vomit. Alright? So there is a vomiting center. So all signals from different parts of the body, the vestibular system, other parts of the CNS, the gastrointestinal tract, and the heart, the tractus solitarius. No, the vomiting center is the nucleus of the tractus solitarius. Chemoreceptor trigger zone. It's called another name in your textbook, but it's still the CTZ. So the different parts of the body where, whenever there's a stimulus that can induce vomiting, need to send a signal to the vomiting center. Okay? So except the signal gets to the vomiting center, the individual will not vomit. And what does the vomiting center do? It induces a vomiting reflex. So we have vomiting center inducing a vomiting reflex as a result of the signals or impulses that it had received from the other parts of the body. So now I'm talking about signals and impulses and all of that. Are you suspecting some chemical substances being involved with this? When we start talking about signals traveling from one part of the body to the other, what do we usually, which group of substances are usually involved in this transfer of signals and neurotransmitters? So you would already, because I'm talking about impulses traveling from GIT and the labyrinth, is the labyrinth, okay, the vestibular system, the labyrinth and the chemoreceptor trigger zone traveling to the vomiting center. So except we get to the vomiting center, vomiting reflex will not be induced. So we have neurotransmitters that are involved in this pathway. So when we have neurotransmitters, what other things must we have for neurotransmitters to effectively carry out their function? Receptors. Okay? When we have neurotransmitters, you guys are becoming pharmacologists already. So receptors must also be present. Okay? Receptors must also be present. Alright, so we have neurotransmitters, we have receptors, and then we have signals being sent from here to there. Alright, so we said all vomiting reflexes must come from the vomiting center. There is, so some impulses from some locations go directly to the vomiting center, like all the ones you've seen here are going directly to the vomiting center. But the chemoreceptor trigger zone, okay, the area postrema, also receives signals from some parts of the body. So when those parts of the body receives noxious stimuli, they send the message to the chemoreceptor trigger zone. The chemoreceptor trigger zone now sends it to the vomiting center. So vomiting center can directly receive impulses from some parts of the body, while other impulses go to the chemoreceptor trigger zone. And then, from there, then the chemoreceptor trigger zone sends the signal to the vomiting center. So, but all vomiting activities must end with vomiting generating activities must go to the vomiting center before a vomiting reflex can be induced. So you have this figure in your textbook, which just summarizes what I've just said now. So because we have receptors involved, we have neurotransmitters involved in this vomiting reflex generation. And we said some signals go directly to the vomiting center, some go to the CTZ. So in your textbook, it is referred to as the chemoemetic trigger zone. So it is still CTZ. If you see chemoreceptor trigger zone, there's another word that's used for it, but basically it's talking about that area postrema to the vomiting center. Alright, so we said that neurotransmitters are involved. So the CTZ, or let me start with or maybe I should leave the slide and just speak to this one first. The vomiting center has majorly muscarinic and histaminic receptors. So those are the main receptors that are found in the vomiting center. So when any substance that can stimulate these receptors will cause vomiting. Alright? Any stimuli that can any stimuli that can affect this or bind to this cause neurotransmitters to be released that bind, that's the word you use. Any stimuli that can cause the appropriate neurotransmitters to be released that can bind to this muscarinic M1 and histamine receptors will induce the vomiting reflex. So you have stimuli from the higher brain centers. It's called the higher cortical centers. Let me see if I have it here. It's not. Okay, central nervous system, the cortex. So your higher cortical centers will be somewhere high there on the upper part of the brain. Okay. So any stimuli that can cause. So when we say that the vomiting center has M1, majorly M1 and H1 receptors. Which neurotransmitters are necessary to stimulate or cause an activity on those receptors? Okay, so you have muscarinic receptors and then you have histamine receptors, which which neurotransmitters will cause a pharmacological action which stimulate acetylcholine? And for which of them? The muscarinic. And then the other one, histamine. Histamine receptors are stimulated by histamine. Alright? Wow. So histamine and acetylcholine are the neurotransmitters that are involved in the transmission or the stimulation of these receptors. So if we have the higher cortical centers. So the higher cortical centers are responsible they respond to stimuli as a result of smell. We mentioned smell when we're talking about what causes emesis. Responsible for sensing stimuli from smell, from sight, or emotion. So if there's a bad smell around here now, the higher cortical center senses it. But you know that it differs for different people. What you think is noxious, I might not. I might think it's sweet. They were painting an office, a particular office on my floor last week, and I could not leave my door open because I hate the smell of paint and all of that. And then one of my first year students comes in and leaves the door. And I'm like, no, close it. She said, no, the smell is nice. She likes it.
Like it's not petrol. I know people hate it, but I like it. It smells good.
So you see, difference for. So your higher cortical center smells when it gets that sensation. It doesn't react to it. It's normal for it. But for me, if it's so bad, I calm down with a cold immediately. As in, I start sneezing and then my nose, I get congested immediately. And this congestion I'm having is one of the bad smell. So it happens for different people. So the higher is a smell, and then you see some things, something frightening. Fright can make people throw up. So fright can make people, and it's someone who is emotional, who crying, just lost their boyfriend. Just because I lost a boyfriend. Or someone has really hurt them, something really terrible has happened, and so lost somebody, and some people grow up as a result. So the higher cortical center is responsible for managing all of those responses. And so when it gets this stimuli, it releases the neurotransmitters that will bind to your receptors in the vomiting centers. So it acts directly. So your higher cortical center directly sends its own impulses to the vomiting center. Also the labyrinth impulses, that's from the ear. Okay? From the ear you have impulses being sent, and that's why you have, what are the functions of the ear apart from balance as well. So that's why when the people that have motion sickness, alright, it has to do with that imbalance or sensation or sending of impulses from the ear to the vomiting center as well. Another condition that has to do with imbalance is your Meniere's disease. That also has to do with imbalance and it all originates from the labyrinth system. The impulses come from the labyrinth system in the ear. Another part of the body where impulses go direct to the vomiting center is the GIT, the visceral organs. The visceral impulses are sent stimuli from the from the visceral organs, send impulses straight to the vomiting center as well. So it could be from the GIT, but GIT irritation, gastritis, anything like that, can cause eating toxic, poisoned food, and all of that can cause person to your bile ducts or your genitourinary tract as well. Impulses can travel from that way. So we see all those ones go direct to the vomiting center. Then we have, so the vomiting center, the BBB there, you see there is the blood-brain barrier. So the vomiting center is protected by the blood-brain barrier, all right, such that some substances cannot send impulses to the vomiting center. Okay, because it's protected by the blood-brain barrier. And if you've done pharmacokinetics, blood-brain barrier is it lipophilic or hygrophilic? It's majorly lipophilic. So you have substances that are more fatty based being able to cross into the blood-brain barrier. Unlike your CTZ, that is not protected by the blood-brain barrier, so hydrophilic substances can have access to the CTZ, and hydrophilic drugs are more effective here, while you have lipophilic drugs being more effective on that side. So that's why chemical substances and drugs that cause vomiting, those are your immunogenic drugs, affect the CTZ. So if someone is on chemotherapy, for example, chemotherapy, opioids, all of those, they affect the CTZ. And the receptors that are found in the CTZ are your dopamine, okay, your 5-HT, and your neurokinin 1 receptors. So we know the receptors, which neurotransmitters will be needed here to cause impulse generation. D is for dopamine. 5-HT is what? So the 5-HT3 is used as, is also called serotonin, but you know your serotonin neurotransmitters. And so there are serotonin receptors, that's why you have serotonin neurotransmitters. And your neurokinin 1 will be your substance P, the neurotransmitter that's responsible for, that binds to that receptor is substance P, while dopamine is dopamine. Dopamine is dopamine. So you see that. So since we know, so like we've been saying in the course of this lectures, that so what causes the nausea? What's the main reason why the nausea is generated? Sorry, the nausea and the vomiting is generated. If you look at this now, from this what we talked about, what is mainly responsible for generating that reflex, vomiting reflex? Relates this to your previous lectures, your NSAIDs, opioids. If you had to say this is the main offender in this situation, which of this would you say, okay, you're the one that's mainly responsible for this? The vomiting center. But you know, the vomiting center can sit by itself. If no impulses come to it, no signals come to it, it will cause vomiting. It will cause vomiting if nothing. So it's like let's say, for example, probably if we're using this example. Someone is an addict, okay, and they take a particular substance, and then there is another person somewhere that keeps giving them that substance. Who is the main culprit? Because if you withhold the substance, and this addict doesn't have any way of getting the substance, if you withhold the substance, then the addict will not get it. Alright? So it's the person supplying the substance that is the main culprit. So who is the main culprit?
The chemoelectric.
Yes. If it doesn't get impulses, it just sits there and has a nice thing. Neurotransmitters and the receptors are working, okay? But more importantly, it is neurotransmitters. Because remember, the neurotransmitters are responsible for mediating the activity.
But then they won't work if there's no stimulus. So it's actually
Yes. So this. Okay, so it's actually the stimuli that the patient gets. Okay, so the stimuli releases the neurotransmitters that binds to the receptor. So we can have two cohorts. Okay, let's look at it from that perspective, which I haven't before. So let's look at the stimuli, because if we take away the stimuli, neurotransmitters will not be released, and neurotransmitters will not have any work to do to bind to the receptors, to generate the impulses that goes to the vomiting center to cause the vomiting reflex. So for us to treat emesis, from what our dear lady here has said, we can look at it from two different perspectives. Take away the stimuli, and then there won't be vomiting. Or
Take away the receptors.
Intercept. If the stimuli is present, intercepts or block or inhibits the neurotransmitters. Inhibit the neurotransmitters. If we can't take away, because sometimes you can't take away the similar, like someone who needs to do chemotherapy or have chemotherapy or radiotherapy needs to have it. Someone who is pregnant, we can't take away the stimuli in this case because that means we need to get out the baby, force them to have the baby before time, and the baby will hardly be developed in the first trimester when we have the most nausea and vomiting. So we can either take away the stimuli or intercept the neurotransmitters. In the event where we can't take away the stimuli, we intercept the neurotransmitters. So we know the neurotransmitters that are the culprits here. For the vomiting center, we have muscarinic, acetylcholine, neurotransmitter, and histamine. For the CTZ, we have dopamine, serotonin, and substance feeding. So which drugs can block the activity of the neurotransmitters? The antagonists. So that's why when you look at the list of your drugs, D2 receptor antagonist, serotonin receptor antagonist, substance P antagonist, and so everything you see there is an antagonist of the receptors that are responsible for generating the impulse that leads to the vomiting reflex. So my job is done. Isn't it? Okay, so you would see, I've already mentioned, so you can read up stories about the vomiting center. I already mentioned that it's protected by the BBB, and then the locations that send signals to it. Alright, and then the CTZ as well. So in the CTZ, there are opioid receptors. There are also opioid receptors in the CTZ, and that's why opioids cause, when a person takes an opioid, they have nausea and vomiting as one of the side effects because it stimulates the receptors in the CTZ. So any drug that is taken that can stimulate the receptors in the CTZ or the vomiting center will be an hematogenic drug.
So now that we've got most drugs, they have the side effects of nausea and vomiting. That means they're all found on the CTZ. They do have an impact.
They're in the CTZ or the vomiting. Look, drugs will be mainly in the CTZ. They said they are lipophilic drugs that can cross the blood-brain barrier and affect the vomiting center.
Okay.
So most of your hydrophilic drugs will work on the CTZ, and then lipophilic ones, because they can cross the blood-brain barrier, would also affect the vomiting center. Alright, so you'll see the drugs there. So these drugs are called antiemetics, and they are antagonists of the receptors that we have already identified. So what next now? So we have your D2 receptor antagonist, and this we can find on that figure that we had that's in your book. Your D2 receptor antagonist, metoclopramide. So based on where they are found, let's use this slide for this. Based on where they are found, based on the receptors they work on and where the receptors are found, either in the CTZ or in the vomiting center, that affects the kind of nausea and vomiting they can stop. Do you understand? It affects nausea because the vomiting and the vomiting that occurs in the CTZ is caused by different stimuli from different locations compared to the nausea and vomiting that is generated solely at the vomiting center. Remember, we have the labyrinth impulses going straight to the vomiting center, and so drugs that would stop that will be able need to cross the blood-brain barrier to affect that. So that's where you have your metoclopramide, domperidone, and prochlorperazine for as they are the D2 antagonists. So they're able to intercept, antagonize the neurotransmitter here and bind to the receptors in the D2, on the D2 receptors. So your metoclopramide would be for radiation sickness. We said for chemical substances and drugs that cause vomiting in the CTZ, remember? Okay? Those ones cause vomiting through the CTZ. So you have them being the D2 center is in the CTZ, D2 receptors are in the CTZ. So you have this, the drugs being able to stop radiation sickness, post-operative vomiting, all of those kind of vomiting. And domperidone is similar to metoclopramide, but it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. So if a drug crosses the blood-brain barrier as well, it has the ability to cause CNS side effects like your extrapyramidal symptoms in the patient, and sedation and all of that come along with being able to cross the blood-brain barrier. Being able to cross the blood-brain barrier has to do with your lipophilicity or hydrophilicity. So histamine and muscarinic receptor antagonists, because these are the receptors that are found in the vomiting center. So any drug that can block them will block any impulses from any of the locations that can affect the vomiting center. So these ones, because remember also that the CTZ needs to send its impulses to the vomiting center. So if a drug can inhibit or block the activity of the neurotransmitters at these receptors, then it can stop every kind of vomiting, because the vomiting center is the final stop for a vomiting reflex to occur. So even if it affects the CTZ, it needs to send it to the vomiting center. But if there is a drug that's already stopping the vomiting center from generating a vomiting reflex, so any impulse affecting the CTZ cannot generate vomiting, because CTZ reports to vomiting center. So once the powerhouse is locked, whosoever the powerhouse is the man in charge, the major general. If the major general is not accessible, then all the other generals cannot do anything. They can't have any effect. Example, your cyclizine and cinnarizine are examples. So there are those ones that can also block the D2 and the muscarinic receptors, like promethazine. Promethazine, as it crosses the blood-brain barrier, so it has very sedative effect as well. Your serotonin antagonists are ondansetron, dolasetron, and all of those also will work on your 5-HT. 5-HT is in which is it CTZ or the CTZ? It can be found in the CTZ. So it will work for nausea and vomiting caused by chemotherapeutic drugs. So remember that CTZ, because it doesn't have the blood-brain barrier protection, chemicals can affect the CTZ. Chemical substances and drugs can affect the CTZ. So any drug that can stop the neurotransmitters or affect the receptors in the CTZ will work for chemotherapeutic or drug-related, radiation-related nausea and vomiting. I'm going to ask, sir.
Yes, there's the past 3 slides and not on the uploaded slides.
Pardon?
The past 3 slides that you
That's
is it past 4?
because there's a slide in between, but it's not really.
It's not on the uploaded slide.
On the uploaded slide. So where did that one come from? So, okay, let's see. Do you have this one?
No.
So what's on the slide?
It's stopped.
You stopped at level from D2 receptor antagonist in the CTZ. It stopped from there.
So I need to read it. Okay, no problem. I'll do that. Okay, so you have your NK1 receptors as well. Then antiemetics in pregnancy. The problem with antiemetics in pregnancy is that have you heard of teratogenicity of drugs? Teratogens. Teratogens are drugs that will, or any substance that will cause malformations in a child or in a fetus, while still developing in the mother, especially in the first trimester, in the first 55 days of pregnancy, where organogenesis is just starting. All right. So any drug that would affect the development, the normal development of the child, is called a teratogen. Okay. So that's teratogenicity. So that's why in pregnant women you're very careful when you're giving them drugs. You need to find out if that drug is a teratogen or not. You don't give pregnant women anything, just anything, anyhow. You need to be careful. So the antiemetics needs to be ones that will not be teratogenic to the child. All right. Some are non-teratogenic, but they are still contraindicated because it can affect the functions of the organs that are already developed in the child, even in the later trimesters. So you also need to be cautious of that. They don't affect the development of the organs, they affect the function of the organs when the child is born. So you don't give such. So the ones that are acceptable in pregnancy are the ones that I've listed out here. So do we understand the relationship between the part of the CNS where the vomiting reflex generates from and the clinical indication of pharmacological indication of the antiemetics? So when is a D2 receptor? When is a D2 receptor antagonist? D2 receptors are found where? In the CTZ. So it will work more for your chemical radiation, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, drug substances, and all of those. But when you talk motion sickness and all of those, where the impulse for vomiting originates from the vomiting center, then we have the drugs that can stop the H1 and M1 receptors being those ones. So that's also intermarried. Alright, but I think I'm done with this now. What time is it? I wish we could go home already. But we need to do poison, eh? So we're done. So let me just go to poison. But that's quite straightforward. I won't spend much time on it. I actually wanted to do my what's it called now? My review, my exam review today. But okay, that guy is not around today. Those are reviews, like the one that helped us last time. I can't even remember what you did here. Is it showing? Oh, it's showing. Okay. Alright, so we're looking at poisoning and treatment in emergencies. poisoning and treatment in emergencies, and our learning outcome is what is in your textbook. So we need to focus on the non-specific and specific antidotes for poisoning, and the antidotes for specific drugs. Okay, when they're taking in as overdoses, and then what you need to give. And we've seen some of those while we were in the course of our lectures. Also, we need to know the drugs for emergencies, certain medical emergencies. What do we give to the patient? And as nurses, that's you need to know this in your ER, the emergency room. The emergency tray also contains drugs. So these drugs for poison, I believe these drugs for poison and emergencies should not be out of stock on the emergency tray. You must also always make sure you have enough stock of those medications. So what is a poison? What is a poison? Toxic. So anything that can cause serious injury or cause death can be called a poison. Any substance, when taken into the body or absorbed, that can cause serious injury or death is called a poison. And so emergencies, so that's how you differentiate between a poison and an emergency. An emergency will be a situation that needs immediate attention. Okay, so if you don't attend to an emergency, death or injury could also occur. So that's what brings them together. Excuse me. So, okay, I need to do this using slideshow. Cool. Okay, so we saw. This is where so let me start there again. When the slides up, remind me. So with poisoning, we see symptoms that might be associated with it. Just some of the symptoms: nausea and vomiting and diarrhea. Just includes that. Then you know. Okay, so poisoning can be treated in. So it can be treated, and it needs to be treated quickly, like we already mentioned, because of the possibility of injury, serious injury or death. It needs to be treated quickly, and it is very, very important to assess the situation accurately, because there is no point giving a quick treatment that is wrong. If you are quickly treating the person with the wrong thing, what happens eventually? Death or serious morbidity can occur as well. So accuracy in assessing the situation is very, very important. So it is important to be able to identify the poison source. What caused the symptoms the patient is presenting with. Most times you might not be able to. Okay? So it is where it is possible, you are certain. But sometimes from the symptoms the patient is presenting with, you will be able to tell the nature of the poison you might have had. So a drug is a pharmacological substance that is used when we want to get for treatment of diseases or treatment or management or prevention. Treatment, management, prevention of diseases. But a drug can become a poison. A drug can become a poison in the situation where an overdose is taken by an individual. So when someone takes an overdose of paracetamol, it becomes a poison to that person. And what is the consequence? You could have liver damage. So that's why you have another medicine called an antidote that can be used in such a case. And we looked at that when we were looking at when we looked at NSAIDs, how the toxicity occurs and how your N-acetylcysteine works to treat the overdose of paracetamol we have. That's in animals. So a drug that is meant for good, when taken in an overdose, as an overdose, will cause a problem to the individual. So you want to know the poison type. You also want to know when the patient took the poison, so you know how long ago. Okay, the time that has elapsed since the poison was taken, so you can judge. Okay, where will the poison be in the body now, to determine the kind of treatment you give to the patient. And like I said earlier, you look at the patient's symptoms they're presenting with, and that would help you to determine what you need to do. The symptoms they're presenting with, how long ago they took the drug, you determine whether you're going to give Emesis. Okay, so if you think it was not long ago, and you can induce Emesis, so the person just throws out the gastric content, and they'll be okay. All you need to do is stomach lavage. Alright? Where it needs to be flushed out of the person, depending on the quantity and nature of, or any other supportive treatment or specific drug therapy that might be needed for that person. So also you want to see, the person is, if the person is throwing up or stooling, okay, you want to take a sample. How best to quickly check what poison the person is taking. You can do that from your urine or vomiters or any other sample, or even if they were able to come with the medication, with a bottle of the medicine, and that even helps you more. So okay, this is the antidote for this condition. Okay, so this treatment, so that's why the treatment of poison can be specific or non-specific. It can be non-specific in the fact that we try to terminate when we are not sure of the source of the poison. So we try to terminate exposure. In that way, you try to reduce the presence of the poison on or in the person. On or in the person. Termination of exposure. So if it's a poison that had to do with contact with the skin, maybe you're wearing something that passed through this. Poison ivy, how does it act? I can't remember. It itches. So that means they're getting in contact with that. So you want to take the clothing off. You want them to go and take a shower, to wash their hair with shampoo, wash the eye. If it's acid that poured on the face, you want to wash the face. You know, all of those kind of processes are to terminate exposure to the source of poison. Take the clothes off and wash it. Alright, so we can terminate the source of exposure. We can support vital body functions as well as accelerate the rate of poison elimination. Accelerate the rate of poison elimination in the individual. So for your non-specific treatment of terminating exposure, if it's topical, like the poison ivy or anything poured on the body or the clothes, that's your topical exposure and you can terminate it through this way. And then your oral exposure, if the individual had taken in the poison, then you go through, you can use any of those methods, Emesis, the stomach lavage, or adsorbents, like your activated charcoal, to get rid of the poison. How do we support vital signs? You check for all of this in the patient. You can see more on this in your textbook. Please, if you don't have a textbook, just quickly copy.
Yeah, please can you go to the next slide? It says, drink water or milk to induce
Emesis.
So if someone, for instance, I drank perfume because I was trying to kill myself, if I drink milk or water, it will cause me to vomit.
See, so he says this is contraindicated in poisons with paraffin and liquid with high aspiration potential.
But like now, okay, if I took any poison now, you're saying that if I drink water or milk, it will induce.
Remember that if someone is throwing up and you're trying to give them something, what happens?
They throw up in
They're
the
feeling nauseated.
But
Like-
they say we should never induce innocence.
No, it depends on the poison. Okay? It depends on the poison. If the poison is not such that it cause more harm on its way out, like an acid, like your paraffin, you don't do such with such things. But if it's something that wouldn't cause any harm, when it's coming out, it won't burn up the esophagus or the intestine and cause more harm on its way out. Of course, there's what's called liquid pneumonia, which is what paraffin and all of those kind of products cause. So if it's going to cause more harm for you to get it out, then you don't try to induce emesis in that case.
But my question is, if I am like, if I do have poison, drinking one of those liquids will induce the vomiting. Is that what it means?
No, because by the time
So what is the
having a poison, naturally one of the symptoms is nausea and vomiting. But we want to encourage nausea and vomiting, so we want to induce emesis and cause it to come out more, so that we can get rid of the content.
But then why is it
Poison out.
isn't it that when people vomit, like they be like drink water?
No, when you're vomiting, you rinse your water. No, not. I don't know about drink water. No, when you say drink water, when you're vomiting,
Only if you're trying to get the poison out, then you can drink water.
Okay,
that's when you say drink water.
Because I thought water was to stop it.
No.
I understand where she's coming from. The drinking water comes from the loss of liquids.
Oh, that's when the vomiting has stopped.
So rehydrate.
Then your ORS, your rehydration therapy.
Yeah.
That's when. But sometimes you want to rinse the mouth. I know you rinse the mouth to wash the face and stuff when you do that. But taking at that time, normally you don't want to take anything. You don't want anything to come to your GI when you are nauseated like that. Okay, so we see here, for emesis, it should not be more than an hour after the medication, the poison has been administered. For stomach lavage, it can be up to 2 hours. The absorbing charcoal as well, it needs to be less than an hour. Okay, and this also is not useful, absorbing charcoal, because it will not absorb to the charcoal. Petrol, paraffin, and all of those it will not be useful for those as well. Okay. So supposed vital signs, you need to check all this, your hyperventilation. If you see the signs in the patient, then you need to help the patient to restore normal vital signs. There's more story on that in your textbook. And then we want to accelerate the elimination rate, which is what we wanted to do with the emesis as well. Accelerate the elimination rate. Colon emptying, any drug that we can give to accelerate colon, we saw domperidone and methylclopramide being able to do that. Your diuretic, we change urinary pH, or vitamin C can also be used, as well as dialysis can be used to get rid of the poison. So specific antidotes, so it can be either non-specific where you do all of those things, terminate exposure, support vital signs, and the last one, accelerate the rate of elimination. You can also do a specific, especially if you know the cause of poisoning, then you don't need to wait. While you're maintaining vital signs and you're terminating exposure or whatever, you are also giving the known antidote once the cause of poisoning is known. And these ones we've seen some of them. So the antidote for aspirin overdose or aspirin poisoning, okay, is vitamin K. We know what does aspirin do? It's an anticoagulant. So if a patient is taking a lot of aspirin and now what will happen? Bleeding. There is hemorrhaging as a result of that. You can give vitamin K. Digoxin overdosage is your decoxin humidifier. Paracetamol overdosage is N-acetyl cysteine. Morphine overdosage is naloxone, alright? Organophosphate. Huh?
She was explaining
That because
Because morphine can cause respiratory depression, and that's something reverse that.
then the organophosphate pesticides, alright, all are, what do they call them again? Those bagons and the rest of them. If there is, peradventure, a child picks it and just sits and so the atropine, quickly get them to the clinic to get a shot of atropine. Alright, so that's for poisoning. Peradventure, there is a clinical emergency. Alright, the patient suddenly develops acute myocardial infarction. Okay, the patient is brought to the clinic and they have acute myocardial. You have assessed them and you see that there's myocardial infarction. Aspirin, streptokinase, and isosabine, dinitrate, and morphine are the drugs of choice in that clinical emergency. Or a patient has hypertensive crisis. Okay? Hypertensive crisis would be what now? Have you done hypertension? What BP would make it an hypertensive crisis? So you want to give your furosemide, morphine, and all of those things. Hypovolemic shock and anaphylactic shock and all of those conditions have the first line drugs. So what you see here are the first line drugs that you use in those emergencies.
Morphine doesn't only help when you have pain. Sometimes can be used in
The furosemide.
Okay.
You want to go back to your opiates, the pharmacological uses of morphine. Is that what it says in the textbook, or did I copy it wrong? For hypertension. Okay, so let's go to the. You want to look at pharmacological. What are the pharmacological?
Is it if maybe the baby is high due to pain or something?
Due to
Extreme pain or something?
if the blood pressure. What are the pharmacological effects of morphine? Let's look at it. That's your NSAID. Is that chapter what now?
Chapter
7. Yes. So if the blood pressure is high as a result of, you say as a result of pain. Maybe the patient was in an accident and then you want to relieve the pain. Okay.
And let's start the
No, opioids, I didn't know in chapter 6. They are CNS drugs.
Chapter 6?
Yeah, 6.8 or something. Because they're CNS.
One of it's hypotension. It's hypotension, yes. Hypotension.
It's used in hypertension. For what?
For what?
Morphine
decreases
depress the reflex vasoconstriction elicited by an increase in carbon dioxide concentration, and this may lead to hypertension. So the release of histamine by morphine and certain other opioids is possibly responsible for a peripheral, arterial, and venous dilatation as well as
You see what I was saying? Just because they administer it, that doesn't mean that they're doing it for pain.
Okay, so we're just trying to present it out. But we're not seeing that.
So morphine can cause hypotension, so we can get hypertension.
increased vasoconstriction elicited by an increased concentration.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not used often because of and it has to be in a hypertensive crisis.
When it's
That's when it is like this person's between life and death. All right, I think that's about it. So, thanks to the author of our text, the book, we are done. So probably next week you have your review session.